Matt, look, at one point you're going to probably want to ask for pause because I know that you've got a lot to say about this. But right now, we're seeing how students are being targeted as they are protesting the war in Gaza. And you have a lot of people who are afraid of what's going to happen to free speech. And you know firsthand because you yourself have been censored. And this is a video from Case Study QB. So please, everyone, follow Case Study QB. Follow him on all of his social media. So let's go ahead and play this. And it's interesting that MSNBC is actually covering this.
Today, the three judges on the U.S. Second Circuit Court of Appeals, a three-judge panel, ruled that detained Tufts PhD student Romesa Ozturk must be transferred from that detention center in Louisiana, where she has been held for over a month, to Vermont within a week. And there, a judge will hear her appeal to be released from imprisonment on bail. Ozturk, a legal resident on a student visa, was snatched off the street by plainclothes immigration agents earlier this year. You're seeing it happen now. She's currently being imprisoned for her protected free speech, seemingly after she wrote an op-ed in her school paper last year at Tufts, where she studies, that was critical of Israel's war on Gaza and Tufts' response to student protests. This is part of an authoritarian attempt to criminalize thought, criminalize political speech, and protest in this country. The Trump administration is attempting to use the full force of the government to punish those who disagree with its support for Israel's war. We have seen the state weaponized in new ways against legal immigrants like Ozturk and Mahmoud Khalil and others. But the federal government is also cracking down on U.S. citizens, putting enormous pressure on universities, both public and private, where some of the most organized and active protests surrounding Gaza have formed. As we speak, you see there, dozens of students at Columbia University are occupying the school's main library, for example. There are NYPD officers on the scene. Mayor Eric Adams, who has aligned himself closely with President Trump, called the protest unacceptable. Protests of all kinds are happening all over the country. I mean, cities and universities have been collaborating with the Trump administration's pressure campaign to stop them. NYU, for example, tried to bar more than 30 pro-Palestinian students from taking their final exams if they did not renounce their rights to protest first. They later walked that back amid public pressure. In Texas, a federal lawsuit was filed last week accusing UT Austin of collaborating with the Texas government to, quote, suppress pro-Palestine speech in violation of the First Amendment. Part of that suit now includes body cam audio of a police officer questioning the legality of arresting peaceful protesters. At Barnard University, again here in New York, student journalist found her graduation under threat for simply covering a protest at her school, not participating in it, covering the protest.
Okay. Do you hear that jackboot marching in the background, Matt? Do you hear it? Because I do. I do. I hear it. Why?
Listen here. It's on one hand, you got Chris Hayes reporting the news, actually telling us something truthful for once. Thank you, Chris Hayes. However, there's some slant to this. And if you notice some of that reporting, the slant is there's an insinuation that Trump brought this on single-handedly. The fact that Eric Adams is aligned with Trump, that's why he's against this whole thing. The Democrats are 100% on the side of imprisoning students, stopping these protests, 100%. And we know this for a fact because none of them had been standing up against this last House bill that almost went to a vote. H.R. 867 almost went to a vote. This was going to be the anti-boycott act that fines American citizens up to $1 million, gives you a prison sentence up to 20 years for participating in protests, participating in whatever the boycotts. And that's what the college, just to be clear, that's what the protests are about, is to boycott Israel however you can, demanding your college does not fund, divests in the funding of a genocide and its settlements and all this illegal activity in the Middle East there. The fact that that bill almost went through, the reason it didn't was because Marjorie Taylor Greene and Thomas Massie stood up against it. None of the Democrats did. So I do not, on one hand, Chris Hayes reporting this and saying this is not okay, that this is happening, but then insinuating that this is a uniquely a Trumpism thing that's going on, that if we had just voted harder, that's what he's implying. Just to be clear, make no mistake, in his report, he's implying If we had just voted harder, maybe this wouldn't be happening. Just if we just gotten Kamala in there, this wouldn't be happening. Which is
it would
total
be
BS.
happening.
Of course, it would be happening.
It would be happening, and more importantly, they would be saying, "No, this is perfectly legit to go after these protesters."
Barnard too may have backed down due to pressure. This atmosphere, this use of pressure and legal means to kind of render taboo an ideological tendency, it's the closest I've seen to McCarthyism in my lifetime. It's an attempt to take a specific, constitutionally protected ideological perspective and intimidate people away from expressing it through threats of force and banishment. It's gotten to the point where when I saw these viral images of musician Dave Matthews holding up signs reading "Stop the Genocide" and "Stop Killing Children," honestly, my first thought was to check his immigration status for fear the Trump administration would try to have him deported. Turns out, though born in South Africa, he's a naturalized U.S. citizen. And here's, to me, what's so crazy about all this. It's crucial as this happens not to lose sight of what all these people are protesting in the first place. Gaza has been bombed for a year and a half. Best estimates we have are that 15,000 children have been killed. 1 million people have been dislocated. The entire strip has been effectively razed to the ground, all of which happened with the sometimes tacit, often explicit support of the Biden administration, as new reporting from Israel's Channel 13 and Dropsite highlights. And after all that, the Trump administration says that the real extremism, the danger, is the one happening on college campuses. And now, just this week, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is announcing moving on to the newest phase of his plan, which, at least as reported and as communicated by ministers in his own government, appears to be to bring about an ethnic cleansing in Gaza. Both the United Nations and the Israeli human rights group B'Tselem have said that ethnic cleansing there is already underway. Netanyahu is openly promising to destroy everything in Gaza, although almost everything is destroyed, to make life there so miserable that 2 million Palestinians will be forced to flee. The hopes for the return of remaining Israeli hostages being held by Hamas almost certainly extinguished. Here is Israel's finance minister.
All right, before we bring in the finance minister, my friend, oh God, look at all of Gaza. It's turned into a moonscape. What the hell happened here, man?
Well, what happened clearly was that Hamas was using citizens as human shields, and that's why we had to blow them all up, because that's what we do. So clearly, it's their fault. They brought it on themselves. No, I mean, this is okay. This is it. The visuals coming out of this for as he said, a year and a half have been more than it's been the most horrific stuff we've ever seen in the palm of our hand in the history of humanity. It's the first genocide that's been televised in real time in our hands. And so this is why there's no you have to start reporting on this now. So on one hand, I would say to people, they said, oh, Trump got in, now Trump's building this, he wants to do this Trump Gaza. Well, he's saying it out loud. That's why it's making it more okay to say the quiet part out loud. Maybe that's a good thing overall. Maybe we're just, maybe I'm being, some would say maybe I'm being too hard on a Chris Hayes, because at least he's reporting it. At least would this be a little bit more under wraps and not, more ignored if Kamala was in office? I don't know. But the fact is, this is either way, this is happening. Either way, both parties are funding this. Either way, nobody is standing up except these random people like Marjorie Taylor Greene and Thomas Massie, who are both on the red side. So here we are looking at this, and there's no other way around it. Of course, it's ethnic cleansing, and that didn't just start now. There's no way around it. This was always the plan from the beginning, and it was never about the hostages. As we know, it was never about any of their excuses. It was always about the greater Israel project, which we're seeing happen in real time. And we need more people speaking out, not people being afraid that their entire lives are going to be ruined for saying, stop killing children.
Mm-hmm. Let's play a little more of this.
Bezalel Smotrich just yesterday.
אז אמרתי עוד פעם, עזה חרבה לחלוטין, אגב, פשוט מכיוון שהיא כולה תשתית טרור אחת גדולה מעל ומתחת לפני הקרקע, פשוט חרבה לחלוטין. אמרתי, אזרחיה מרוכזים מציר מורג ודרומה, במרחב הומניטרי שאין בו חמאס ואין בו טרור, ואגב, משם הם מתחילים לצאת במספרים גדולים מאוד למדינות שלישיות. זה אירוע שישנה את המציאות, את ההיסטוריה של מדינת ישראל עשרות שנים קדימה. אנחנו חייבים להשקיע בו הרבה יותר, זה בעיקר אירוע מדיני מול ארצות הברית, לקבל את אותן מדינות שלישיות. יש שיח טוב שמתקדם מול אותם המדינות, זה צריך להיות הרבה יותר משמעותי, אבל שוב, אין חמאס כישות מתפקדת, לא צבאית ולא אזרחית, חטופינו בעזרת השם חזרו לביתם, צה"ל ממשיך עוד לטהר ולהפוך כל אבן ולהשמיד תשתיות, האזרחים העזתים מרוכזים בדרום, מיואשים לחלוטין, מבינים שאין שם תוחלת ואין מה לחפש בעזה, ומחפשים רילוקיישן להתחיל חיים חדשים במקומות אחרים.
Now, Smotrich is not the only member of Netanyahu's government openly saying stuff like this. Times of Israel quotes National Security Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir saying Gaza must endure hell, and hell also means bombing all the aid depots that Hamas holds, as well as halting the supply of electricity and water.
God, man, come on. All right, like, look, at this point, it's the full-on destruction. All of Gaza has been destroyed. All of it. I don't know what reconstruction looks like. But it's let's be clear here. This is the full on removal, and there is no reconstruction. There will be reconstruction, but not the way people think.
Yeah. So
go ahead.
The numbers are completely wrong. He said earlier about the we know of our best guess is 15,000 children. Hell of a lot more than that. We're talking about, he's talking about where are 2 million people where are they going to go? They're going to be forced in other countries. No, that's not true. 2 million people are not going to be forced in other countries because those 2 million people are starving to death right now. They are dying right now. And however they're going to spin, we know how spinning numbers we know how to spin death numbers. You can, if it's from or with, they can add whatever they want into the cause of death. But we know what the cause of death is. It's intentional starvation, which is worse than anything. That's the thing. It's where burning to death and starvation, the worst two ways to die. And I think underwater, that's like number 3. But here we are watching it in real time. So no, it's not 2 million people have nowhere to go. They're dying right now, and and he's saying it out loud here. He's saying we're not going to let them get anything: aid, supplies, electricity, water. But that didn't just start now, Kit. That's been going from the beginning. It's been about this. So this is just saying it out loud now, a lot louder than we've already known from the beginning, because we've been following this from day one.
Right, exactly. And more importantly, what I find fascinating is that a lot of people are talking about this, but still, even outside of Gaza, you have Lebanon, Syria, the political instability in Syria. You have back and forth between Israel and Lebanon, and then there's the crisis in Yemen and Iran. And of course, right now there's reports of saying that Trump himself is kind of furious at Netanyahu for trying to instigate something with Iran.
Doing so will cause mass starvation of Hamas terrorists and their supporters in the Gaza Strip, and will allow us to return to war with tremendous force when Hamas terrorists are weak and exhausted without any significant ability to fight back, and we can crush them without difficulty. Just today, Chef Jose Andres' World Central Kitchen wrote an alarming dispatch. Quote, after serving more than 130 million total meals and 26 million loaves of bread over the past 18 months, World Central Kitchen no longer has the supplies to cook meals or bake bread in Gaza. Food and aid have not entered Gaza in more than 2 months.
By the way, World Central Aid Kitchen, those are the same people who got bombed from delivering food from point A to point B and returning all the way back. And then again, their vehicles were marked with World Central Kitchen Aid logo and deceased.
Yeah, instead of opposing any of that, our government is enabling it. The Trump administration, in fact, is apparently involved in negotiating conversations about what countries will take the Palestinians forced to flee from the desperation, engaging in the facilitation of what would essentially amount to mass population transfers. And that's a phrase that rightly recalls some of the worst episodes in human history. So currently, we are looking at U.S. and Israeli policy that is more aggressively radical and extremist, more flagrantly in violation of international law and human rights than I think we've seen before. But if you point that out, or you hold up a sign, or you protest, or you write a student op-ed on campus, The Trump administration may try to label you a terrorist, an enemy of the state, and have you removed from the country or put into detention for months. Meanwhile, too many top figures in the Democratic Party have effectively abdicated their leadership on this issue. So what
That comes as no surprise why the Democrats would advocate their leadership, because they don't have leadership.
exactly are young Americans who, as almost every poll shows, have increasingly soured on Israeli policy in Gaza? What are they supposed to do exactly? Should students shut up and pretend that their government isn't abetting mass civilian death and population transfer? I don't think that's going to happen. I can tell you this. No amount of repression and bullying is going to successfully stamp out the movement against this ongoing carnage. If history is any indication, it is just as likely to make the movement stronger.
Exactly. Matt, your thoughts, my friend.
This, him saying this is, again, it's good to have this conversation. People watching MSNBC who didn't know this was going on until Chris Hayes told them. Great. Okay, now you're thinking about it. But I want to remind people this was already considered an act of terror during Biden's administration. We were in UCLA. We were at during those protests. We were at in Chicago. We were out there with you in Chicago during the DNC. These holding up a sign and saying "Stop the genocide" has been considered an act of terror this entire time. Okay, and you are complicit. If you are working for MSNBC or CNN, you are complicit in pretending that the protesters were the violent ones. You misreported that on purpose. Remember, this is, UCLA protesters, they're out of control and they're being violent. No, the Zionists show up, they assault the protesters, and then the police watch, and then they go and they arrest the protesters who just got assaulted by the Zionists. We've seen this all. So this we have to remind people that this has been going on the whole time. Again, great that he's saying, we have to do something about this, but it's the insinuation that it's this unique problem that Trump is bringing to the table because he got elected. It's infuriating to me, Kit, because we need to say enough with the entire two-party duopoly, the uniparty, enough. And when is Chris Hayes going to have the balls to do that? Well, he'll lose his job. So he'll lose his job as MSNBC. But when is he going to have the balls to look in the camera and say the entire system is corrupt? If you show up to a Bernie and AOC rally with a sign, you will be led away in handcuffs. So tell the people what's really going on both sides of the aisle. That's what makes me so infuriating. But again, maybe people are finding out about the genocide for the first time because they only watch MSNBC.